back to episode 4 of the Whole Life Crisis podcast. I'm the host and the creator, Ollie Rosser, and still the only voice that you've heard on this podcast if you have been listening. In the last episode, I mentioned that I was attempting to get a few guests on in the coming weeks. Obviously, there's a bit of a problem with that due to the coronavirus restrictions. I can't have people in a small space, which is where I'm currently sat. My desk, podcasting equipment and studio is set up in quite a small room. So as soon as I've overcome those little hurdles, I think maybe I can get, I don't know, super long cables and just have people sat at opposite ends of the room. That might work. But as soon as I can get that done, I'm hoping to get some different voices on here so it's not just me all the time. I can understand that can get quite tedious. I'm just going to do a brief episode here because I want to do some personal updates. Yesterday I went to Landmark Hospital in Cardiff and had a full abdomen CT scan, and it's quite interesting because it's the first test of that kind that I've had where they sat me down, had me drink radioactive fluids, and then I had a cannula in my arm so they could pump fluid through my veins as well to get a contrast. Obviously it went fine. It was a very brief little scan. I was only in there for about 20 minutes in total, I think. But it was a very, very, very tiny taste of what my mother has been through in the past 6 months. Today is her very last session of chemotherapy. Excuse me. So we're very excited about that. We've got a little sort of welcome home party planned, even though she's been home for the last 10 weeks because we've been very cautious about not letting her out of the house, obviously with the concerns about COVID-19. And obviously chemotherapy puts you in an immunocompromised state. So we've got a little welcome home party plan for her. But yeah, since November last year, she's been poked and prodded by different doctors and nurses, and she's had procedures and surgeries and IV antibiotics and cannulas put in her feet and her arms and all sorts of stuff. And it's been quite harrowing for her, and we're all just really proud that she's come through it now. And this last session of chemotherapy marks sort of an end of a chapter. So yeah, she's done really well. Obviously, she's had some down days during this period, what with side effects of chemotherapy and the challenges of being in lockdown. It's been quite concerning, but I just want to reiterate here, I've said it a couple of times in various videos, podcasts and blog posts, I think. I can't remember what I've written or said. But we're really grateful for what the NHS has done for us. She's had excellent service. She's had excellent treatment ever since she was diagnosed with breast cancer again in November. And it's just been, aside from that initial bit of bad news that she did have cancer, everything since then has been relatively positive. And we're so grateful that she's had such good care and treatment. So, this is just a thank you to the universe for what the NHS has done for us. We're so thrilled that she's come through it. So now she's got a couple of weeks off after this last session of chemotherapy, and then she has 1 week of radiotherapy, which her consultants and doctors have told her will be a breeze compared to the chemo. So yeah, we're just really excited to have her getting back to strength and full health, and then we can enjoy each other's company a bit, because I haven't seen them properly in 8 weeks because I don't live in the household. And obviously we haven't been able to mix. So anytime I have seen my mum has been from a distance where we've just exchanged a few words, waved, and everything else has been done over FaceTime. So it'll be really nice to actually be able to give her a hug again in 2 months' time. I don't know. But it was quite interesting going into the hospital yesterday personally, because it was as busy as I've ever seen it, really. It didn't seem like it was particularly any quieter. But what I noticed that walking around the concourse and the entrance and up and down the hallways is that members of the public, none of them had masks on. It didn't seem like anybody was particularly bothered by the idea of COVID-19 at the minute. I had my mask on because my mum told me to wear one, and I'm a good boy and I do what I'm told. But besides doctors, nurses and porters, nobody else had any face coverings on, so that was quite interesting. I don't know what to make of the COVID-19 thing at the moment. It seems like it's sort of I don't know, it seems like people don't really care about it that much. The parks have opened up, public spaces seem to be a lot busier, and especially with all the protests that are going on, obviously in America, and we've had some here, we've had some in Cardiff and London, I'm sure other cities across the UK. They have been large public gatherings of people. So I would be interested in a few weeks' time to see whether there is a spike in cases. I would expect there to be, because we've been told to stay away from each other for the last 2 months. But if there isn't, I don't know what to make of that then. And obviously I hope it doesn't happen, because I want people to be safe and well. I don't want anybody to be sick. But yeah, it's just something that I'm interested to keep an eye on. We've been overly cautious, as I said a minute ago, because of the immunocompromised state that my mum is in. But yeah, now with these mass gatherings, it'd be interesting to see what happens with the coronavirus. It's been such a bizarre year, 2020. It's just mad. I don't know what to make of it. But we're nearly halfway through. So hopefully the end of the year will be better than the beginning of the year. Another quick update before I finish this. Last episode I mentioned that I donated $20 to the David Dawn GoFundMe. If you didn't know, David Dawn was a 77-year-old retired police officer who was shot and killed, unfortunately, during the protests. I'm not sure which city it was in. I should have found out these facts before I started this. But yeah, he was shot and killed trying to protect a friend's pawn shop over some TVs. People were trying to steal TVs during the protests. He tried to stop them and he ended up losing his life. A little update on that. Whoever donated to the fund got an email from the person who started the fund to say that David Dawn's family no longer wants to work with GoFundMe, because GoFundMe is also allowing funds for people to contribute to bailing out the rioters and the looters who have been arrested during these protests. So obviously they don't want that conflict of interest. They don't want to take money from a company who is also supporting the bailouts of people who have been engaging in violent actions. I can completely understand that. So yeah, that's just a little bit of update. I have received my money back from the David Dawn Fund. I don't know where to go next. I'll look into it, I think, and see how I can help in other ways. But yeah, it's a very, very sad situation that was. Yeah, there just seems to be a lot of unrest in the world at the moment, and it's concerning, to say the least. But yeah. Anyway, one thing I will mention quickly as well is, as a part of these protests, there's been a lot of public outcry for the removal of statues that are commemorating people that may have been involved years ago in things like the slave trade, to put it bluntly. Now, one most notably, I think, in Bristol, I can't remember the first name of the guy whose statue it was. I think his surname was Colston. They pulled it down and they threw it into the dock in Bristol. And it's happened across the United States as well. There's people trying to remove statues, but they're doing it in a way that is very lawless. It's just a mob of people who are going to tear these statues down. One instance in America, I believe that there was a group of people pulling a statue down, and one of the protesters actually ended up underneath it as the statue fell, and I believe he's in a coma now. So a very heavy statue fell on him, hit him in the head, and now he's in a bit of trouble. I can fully understand the desire to move these statues so that they're not in the public anymore, because of what they represent. Yeah, I get that. But I think personally, I would rather see it done in a more structured way, by which they'd remove the statues and put them in a museum somewhere, so that we don't forget that history. These statues aren't a celebration of that history, and by all means they should be removed from the public. I get that, but doing it in this way, where it's putting people's lives at risk and people are in danger because of it's an unsafe process, I don't agree with that. One of my favourite trips was to the Dachau Holocaust Memorial or Concentration Camp Memorial Museum in Munich. Sean and I went a few years ago. And obviously that place is set up not as a celebration of the Holocaust. The museum isn't there so that we can remember fondly what happened during the Holocaust and World War II, but it's there as a reminder of the atrocities of what went on so that we don't repeat that. And I think it's a very important thing to remember the negative history, because history is history and it doesn't change. But if we try to forget what happened, I do think we run the risk of, making those same mistakes again. So yeah, one of my favorite trips was to the Holocaust Museum, just to be able to see how horrific those conditions were and the horrific things that went on. And I think if we try to erase history and we try to remove, obviously the statues is just a sticking point at the moment because it's what's current, but I would much rather see them be put somewhere so that we can remember what happened, not fondly obviously because it's not a fond memory, but just as a reminder of what not to do. Does that make sense? I'm going to leave that there because I've got to go and get some stuff done. It's currently 12 o'clock. At 2 o'clock, we're expecting my mum to return home and welcome her with our Straight Outta Chemo t-shirts. So yeah, I'm going to leave that there. I just wanted to mention it because there's a lot of things happening in the world at the moment, and I'm trying to gather my thoughts and think about the best way to express my feelings about it. Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. I certainly have. This is the 5th time I've tried to record this due to various interruptions. But yeah, hopefully I'll have some more guests on soon and there'll be some different voices to hear. Thanks for listening. Stay safe. Take care of each other. And I'll be back probably next week for more personal updates. I love you guys. Bye-bye.